Brothers and sisters of Africa, people of the world, I want you to listen carefully to what I am about to say because history is unfolding before our very eyes. For too long, Africa has been spoken of as the land of potential, never the land of power. For too long, our stories have been told by others, stories of famine, stories of aid, stories of crisis, but never the story of strength, of vision, of leadership that changes today. Something has happened that the world's superpowers prayed would never happen. Something has happened that Washington, London, and Paris did not anticipate, did not imagine, and certainly did not want to believe could be real. Burkina Faso, yes, a nation they thought too small, too dependent, too humble, has just signed a $60 billion oil alliance with Oman. And with that single signature, Africa has sent shockwaves across the globe. Make no mistake, this is not just about oil. This is about power. This is about who controls tomorrow's energy, who dictates the future of nations, who decides whether Africa remains a pawn on the global chessboard or finally becomes a queen that moves with authority. And today, with this deal, Africa has just made its move. Imagine it. For over a century, Africa's oil has fueled the engines of Western prosperity. Nigerian oil lit the lamps of Europe. Angolan oil powered factories in America. Libyan oil ran NATO's war machines. Yet while our resources flowed outward, our people were left in darkness, our children studying by candlelight while our oil lit the skies of others. But now, with Burkina Faso standing shoulder to shoulder with Oman, the tide has turned. Can you feel it? Can you hear it? It is the sound of a continent breaking its chains. It is the roar of a people who have decided that enough is enough. This $60 billion alliance is not merely a contract, it is a declaration. A declaration that Africa will no longer be the fuel for other empires. Africa will build its own empire, and already the world trembles. In the corridors of Washington, advisors are whispering. What does this mean for U.S. energy dominance? What if Africa chooses to trade with Africa? What if Africa decides to bypass the dollar? What if Africa finally stands united? They are asking the very questions they hoped would never be asked. But here is the truth. This moment was inevitable. You cannot silence a billion people forever. You cannot suppress the birthright of a continent forever. You cannot hold back the sun when it rises, and today, the African sun is rising. Burkina Faso, a land they once mocked for its poverty, has now become the torchbearer of Africa's new age. And this is only the beginning. For if one small nation can make the world tremble with a pen, imagine what a united Africa can do with its will. Imagine what happens when we refine our oil at home, when we trade our resources in our own currencies, when we tell the West, no more exploitation, no more theft, no more control. Brothers and sisters, this alliance with Oman is more than economics. It is the opening shot of an energy revolution. It is the crack in the wall of Western dominance. It is Africa's voice thundering across the globe. We will no longer beg for space at your table. We are building our own table, and the world will sit at it. So tonight, let us prepare to go deeper. Tonight, let us strip away the lies, expose the plots, and declare without hesitation. Africa has awakened, and no force, no empire. No sanction, no propaganda can put us back to sleep. Brothers and sisters of Africa, sons and daughters of the soil, tonight I bring you a message that is shaking the walls of Washington, rumbling across the deserts of the Middle East, and igniting flames of pride from the savannas of West Africa to the shores of the Atlantic. Burkina Faso, a nation they once called insignificant, has stood tall once again. Together with the Sultanate of Oman, it has signed a $60 billion oil alliance, an alliance so daring, so unprecedented that it challenges not only the balance of energy in Africa but also the very dominance of the United States in this continent's veins of black gold. Let us pause for a moment and recognize the gravity of what has just happened. For decades, the U.S. energy machine thrived on one unshakable assumption, that Africa's resources, its oil, its gas, its minerals would forever flow in one direction, outward, controlled by Western companies, guarded by Western militaries, dictated by Western policy. They believed Africa would never speak back, never negotiate on equal footing, never shape its own destiny. They saw us as a supplier, a backyard reservoir for their power plants, their industries, their armies. But today, Burkina Faso and Oman have shattered that illusion. This $60 billion oil alliance is more than a deal. It is a declaration of sovereignty. It is a trumpet call that Africa has stepped into the energy arena not as a pawn, but as a player bold, strategic, and unstoppable. And it is Burkina Faso, a nation often dismissed, often underestimated, that has placed the first stone in this new foundation. Do you know what makes this deal so earth-shaking? It is not only the sheer size $60 billion, a figure larger than the GDP of several African nations combined. It is the spirit behind it. This alliance between Burkina Faso and Oman is not about extraction for outsiders. It is about partnership for Africans. It is about building refineries in Ouagadougou, pipelines across the Sahel, training African engineers, employing African youth, creating a circle of wealth that stays here, in Africa, instead of vanishing into the pockets of foreign shareholders in New York, London, or Paris. And do not think for a moment that Washington is not watching. No, my brothers and sisters, tonight there are sleepless nights in the halls of the Pentagon, in the offices of the State Department, and in the skyscrapers of Wall Street, because they know what this means. They know that if Burkina Faso and Oman can break free and chart their own course, other nations will follow. They know that if Africa can form alliances outside of Western control, the chains of dependency will rust and break forever. Look carefully at the symbolism here. Oman is not just any partner. Oman stands at the heart of the Gulf, a nation with centuries of maritime trade, with energy experience carved deep into its history, and with the courage to stand outside Western dictates when it chooses. By shaking hands with Burkina Faso, Oman has sent a signal. Africa is not to be pitied, not to be patronized, but to be partnered with. Together they have signed a document worth $60 billion, but its true value cannot be measured in money. Its true value lies in what it represents: dignity, equality, and independence. Now, let us ask ourselves, why Burkina Faso? Why would a small landlocked country in the Sahel, without the oil fields of Nigeria or the vast reserves of Angola, be the spearhead of this revolution? The answer, my friends, is simple. Because leadership is not about size, leadership is not about wealth, leadership is not about who has the biggest army or the largest reserves. Leadership is about courage, and Captain Ibrahim and the people of Burkina Faso have shown courage that is shaking empires. They have shown that when a nation decides to stand tall, no matter its size, the world must adjust. Think of the symbolism. Burkina Faso, once under the boot of French colonial control, now rejects U.S. dominance in the energy arena. A country they said was poor has just signed one of the richest oil alliances in African history. A land they mocked as weak has just delivered one of the strongest blows to U.S. energy hegemony in Africa and the United States. They are scrambling. For decades, they used sanctions, military bases, and political manipulation to ensure no such deal would ever emerge. They counted on African leaders who bowed to pressure, who feared punishment, who traded sovereignty for temporary comfort. But now the ground has shifted. The deal is signed. The ink is dry, and there is nothing Washington can do to erase it. But let me make this clear: this alliance is not about Burkina Faso alone. This is about all of Africa. When one nation dares to break the chains, it gives courage to the rest. When one nation builds a refinery, another will build a port. When one nation signs a sovereign deal, another will find the strength to say no to exploitation. And soon, the dominoes fall. Brothers and sisters, what we are witnessing is not just an oil alliance. It is the rebirth of Pan-African energy independence. For the first time in modern history, an African nation has taken control of its own destiny in the global oil market, not as a beggar, not as a junior partner, but as an equal with billions on the table. This is history in the making, and this history will not be written by Washington. It will not be written by Paris. It will not be written in London. It will be written here in Africa by Africans for Africans, with ink made from the sweat and determination of our people. So tonight I ask you, are you ready to witness what happens when Africa finally refuses to be an energy colony? Are you ready to see what happens when the continent rises not just as a supplier, but as a power? Are you ready for the day when oil and gas, sun and wind, and the brilliant minds of African engineers build an energy empire that no superpower can ignore? That day, my friends, has begun. It has begun in Ouagadougou. It has begun in Muscat. It has begun with $60 billion of courage, and it cannot be stopped. Brothers and sisters, let us now open the curtains wider and examine the storm that is gathering outside Africa's borders. Because when a move of this magnitude is made, when a nation like Burkina Faso steps into the global energy market with such audacity, the world does not remain silent. The tremors have reached Washington, London, and Paris. The tremors have rattled the oil corridors of Houston, the boardrooms of Wall Street, and the military planners in the Pentagon. They are whispering, they are panicking, they are plotting. But one thing is certain: the balance of power has been altered forever. Understand this: for over a century, oil has been the heartbeat of American dominance. Every war they waged, every deal they brokered, every coup they sponsored in Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America, all of it had oil running through its veins. Oil was the currency of empire. Oil fueled their tanks, their jets, their aircraft carriers. Oil sustained their industries, their dominance in finance, their influence in global politics. Whoever controlled oil controlled nations. Whoever monopolized oil commanded empires. Now imagine their horror when a landlocked African nation, Burkina Faso, one they dismissed as powerless, joins hands with Oman and signs away $60 billion worth of sovereignty. Imagine their rage when they realize that for the first time in living memory, Africa is beginning to dictate the terms of its energy destiny, not as a servant, but as a master. Already the whispers in Washington are growing louder. They are asking themselves, how did we miss this? How did Burkina Faso, a nation outside our grasp, slip through our fingers and strike a deal that even our intelligence networks could not prevent? How did Oman, a Gulf state we thought would forever orbit our influence, dare to shake hands with Ouagadougou in defiance of American eyes? But here is the truth. They missed it because they underestimated us. They missed it because they thought Burkina Faso was too small, too poor, too dependent. They missed it because they could not imagine Africa daring to think beyond the colonial blueprint, and it is precisely in that arrogance that they lost. Mark my words, the United States will not sit idle. They will attempt sabotage. They will pressure Oman diplomatically. They will try to infiltrate this alliance, to poison it, to break it before it grows too strong. They will unleash their media empires to paint Burkina Faso as reckless, Oman as irresponsible, and Africa as unstable. They will send emissaries with promises, with bribes, with threats. And when those fail, they will attempt the oldest tricks in their arsenal: destabilization, sanctions, and division. But hear me now, Burkina Faso is no longer afraid. The chains of dependency have been broken, and with this alliance, the nation has secured not just billions of dollars, but billions of reasons to defend its sovereignty. For every barrel of oil that flows through this partnership, a shield of dignity is forged. For every contract signed under equal terms, another wall against neocolonialism rises. And let us not forget the larger canvas. This is not just about oil, it is about energy independence. It is about refusing to beg the International Monetary Fund for loans tied with poison strings. It is about saying no to the World Bank's handcuffs, disguised as assistance. It is about declaring that Africa will no longer power the world while its own people sit in darkness. Think about this. With the Omani partnership, Burkina Faso is not just selling oil. It is building refineries inside Africa. It is training thousands of African engineers, geologists, and technicians. It is creating industrial corridors that stretch across the Sahel, generating jobs for young Africans who have too long been told their only future is migration or despair. Imagine the symbolism of African oil being refined by African hands, sold under African contracts, and reinvested into African schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. That is what terrifies Washington the most, not the money, but the independence. Now, what does this mean for Africa's brothers and sisters in other nations? It means possibility. It means that Nigeria, with its vast reserves, can finally choose alliances that serve Africans first. It means Angola can renegotiate from a position of strength. It means Ghana, Senegal, Mozambique, Tanzania, all nations sitting on energy wealth can look at Burkina Faso and say, if they can do it, so can we. It means the old system of exploitation is cracking, one deal at a time. And what about Oman? Why would a Gulf nation risk America's wrath to stand with Burkina Faso? The answer is as bold as it is clear. Oman has seen the writing on the wall. They know the era of blind obedience to the West is over. They know the future of global energy lies not in a single empire but in multipolar partnerships. They know Africa is the new frontier of growth, the final frontier of untapped power. By signing this deal, Oman is not just investing in oil, it is investing in Africa's rise. It is investing in history. Consider also the scale, $60 billion. That is not small change. That is not a token gesture. That is a sum so large it could build entire new cities, new railways, new industries. That is a figure that announces, with no ambiguity, that Burkina Faso and Oman intend to play in the big leagues of global energy. This is no side project. This is a masterstroke. And so, while Washington panics, while Paris fumes, while London calculates, Africa celebrates, because this is the beginning of something bigger. This is not just Burkina Faso's win. This is Africa's win. A win for sovereignty. A win for courage. A win for unity. But my friends, let us not be naive. Victories of this magnitude invite enemies of equal magnitude. The path ahead will not be easy. Pressure will come. Lies will come. Attempts at sabotage will come. But the difference today is that Africa is no longer facing this storm alone. For every attempt to isolate Burkina Faso, Oman will stand. For every attempt to undermine this deal, Africans across the continent will rally. For every attempt to intimidate, the alliance will grow stronger. So let us prepare, not with fear, but with determination. Because this oil alliance is not just about barrels and pipelines, it is about identity, about rewriting the destiny of Africa, about placing our hands firmly on the wheel of our future. And in the days to come, when the headlines scream of sanctions, when the commentators in Washington predict failure, when the analysts in Paris write of instability, remember this: they are not describing reality. They are describing their fear, and their fear is proof that Africa is finally rising. Brothers and sisters, let us move deeper into the heart of this transformation, because this moment is bigger than economics, bigger than energy, bigger even than geopolitics. This alliance between Burkina Faso and Oman is spiritual. It is the reawakening of a continent that has been forced to sleep for too long. Think back to the stories of our ancestors. They were told by colonial masters that Africa was a land of chaos, incapable of self-governance, incapable of vision. They were told our only purpose was to supply raw material, to give away gold, oil, cocoa, diamonds, uranium, and in return, beg for aid that never truly helped us. But this $60 billion alliance is the thunder that wakes us from that lie. It is the rebirth of dignity, the resurrection of African pride. I want every African listening to this message to understand something clearly. This is not just Burkina Faso's triumph, it is a torch that says Africa has entered the room of global power, not as a beggar, not as a servant, but as an equal partner. And once a torch is lit, its flame cannot be hidden. Across the continent, the ripple effects are already being felt. In Nigeria, lawmakers are reconsidering contracts signed decades ago with multinational oil giants that robbed the people while enriching the foreigner. In Angola, whispers of renegotiation with China have begun. In Ghana, energy experts are calling this deal the blueprint of a new African era, and in South Africa, voices are rising, urging Pretoria to form alliances that protect the continent's resources for Africans first. This is the new age, my brothers and sisters, the age of self-determination, an age where no African leader can hide behind the excuse of weakness, because Burkina Faso has proven that courage is stronger than size, vision is stronger than geography, and unity is stronger than fear. But we must also confront the storm that is coming. The United States has already begun its shadow war. In think tanks across Washington, strategies are being drawn. How do we block Burkina Faso's access to global financial systems? How do we pressure Oman through the Gulf Cooperation Council? How do we sponsor propaganda within Africa to turn brother against brother? These are not questions of if, these are questions of how soon. Let us not forget history. When leaders in Africa dared to take control of their resources, when Patrice Lumumba in Congo said the wealth of Congo belongs to Congolese, he was assassinated. When Thomas Sankara declared that he would grow food instead of importing dependence, he was betrayed. When Muammar Gaddafi called for a united States of Africa, he was bombed. This is the reality. The West has never tolerated African sovereignty when it threatened their interests. But let me tell you why this moment is different. Because unlike Lumumba, unlike Sankara, unlike Gaddafi, Burkina Faso is not alone. This is the Sahel Alliance. This is Pan-African solidarity. This is multipolarity in action. Burkina Faso has Niger, Mali, Guinea, and the rising African consciousness at its back. Burkina Faso has Oman standing tall in the Gulf, China watching carefully with interest, Russia quietly extending its hand, and millions of Africans ready to defend the dream. This is not one leader in isolation, this is a movement with too many roots to be uprooted. And so, to America I say this: you may threaten, but Africa no longer trembles. You may sanction, but Africa no longer begs. You may plot, but Africa no longer sleeps. The age of fear is over, and the age of dignity has begun. Now let us imagine together the world that is being born. Imagine an Africa where oil from Burkina Faso is refined in Ouagadougou, distributed through African-built pipelines across ECOWAS, traded in African currencies like the ECO, and reinvested into African schools, roads, and industries. Imagine an Africa where solar panels built in Mali light up homes in Chad, where Omani tankers carry African oil under contracts written by Africans, where no child studies by candlelight while oil flows beneath their feet. That is the world this alliance opens. That is the destiny we are writing. And yes, it terrifies the West, because for centuries they thrived on an Africa that doubted itself. They thrived on an Africa divided, an Africa exploited. But now, with this deal, that illusion has shattered. They cannot contain what has been unleashed. They cannot reverse the awakening of a billion voices. Let us also honor Oman for its courage. For Oman to stand with Burkina Faso is not merely an economic move, it is a statement. It is a declaration that multipolarity is not just theory but reality. It is proof that nations of the global south can unite, bypassing the traditional powers that once controlled every transaction. Oman has placed its name on the right side of history, and history will remember it. And now, to you, the people listening tonight, the citizens of Africa, the guardians of our future, I ask you, what will you do with this moment? Will you let it pass as another headline? Or will you rise, organize, and build upon it? Because no matter how bold this alliance is, it will only endure if the people of Africa stand behind it. This is why I say, let us defend it with our voices. Let us defend it with our unity. let us defend it with our refusal to be divided. For if they come with lies, let us answer with truth. If they come with bribes, let us answer with loyalty. If they come with force, let us answer with resilience, because the destiny of Africa is too precious to sell, too sacred to abandon. Now we stand at the edge of history. The ink has dried on the $60 billion agreement. The pipelines are being designed. The world is watching. America is calculating. But Africa is rising. And once a continent begins to rise, no empire can hold it down. So let this day be remembered not as the day Burkina Faso and Oman signed a contract, but as the day Africa declared, we will power ourselves, we will build ourselves, we will free ourselves. And when our children and their children look back at this moment decades from now, they will not see fear or compromise. They will see courage. They will see defiance. They will see a continent that decided finally to stand tall. Brothers and sisters, the age of begging is over. The age of bargaining with chains on our wrists is over. The age of dependence is over. From this day forth, let Africa speak with one voice. We are the owners of our resources, the masters of our destiny, the architects of our freedom. And to the world I say, prepare yourselves, for a new Africa is here, and this Africa bows to no one.